Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Today I want to talk about some ideas to sort of, some rhythm guitar ideas to sort of make your rhythm playing more interesting in a band setting. Maybe backing up a harmonica player or fronting a small combo, things like that. These ideas typically would work best if you're not competing with harmonic space with other instruments that occupy that same range, like a keyboard or organ or another guitar. That'll be a whole separate video or series of videos to cover those comping ideas and what sort of approach to take when you're working around other instruments in that same frequency range. But for now, I want to think about, in a blues context, let's say you're backing up a harmonica player, you're the only guitar player in the band, and what approaches you can take to, like I said, make your playing a little bit more interesting, maybe create some momentum. The two main concepts I want to cover are adding bass lines to your rhythm chordal playing, and using different chord voicings for the chord you're playing to create a sense of momentum. So let me give you an example. I'll play through this. This can work over all different types of grooves, straight beats, swing grooves. I'm just going to play a nice laid back shuffle in the key of A here, and I'll go through it once in kind of a standard way, and then I'll a standard stripped down simple way. And then I'll start adding some little bass runs and maybe try some different chord voicings and demonstrate what I'm talking about. And then I'll go back and break down what's happening there. So, all right, just nice and easy in the key of A. Okay, so hopefully I kind of covered some ideas that I was talking about. The first time through, the way I played real simple and stripped down like that works fine. And if you're in a bigger band setting and there's a lot going on, that can be totally appropriate, and you might not want to do any more than that. But if you're in a situation where maybe you want to cover a little bit more ground, make things a little bit more interesting, or create that sense of momentum, like I said, these are some tools you can use to do that. Okay, so I was starting with a sixth. I was playing a sixth chord, but in the blues, a seventh chord, dominant seventh, or a ninth chord will work just fine. Over the 4, I was playing a ninth chord, so D9. 5 was an E9, or an inversion of that. So as far as adding bass lines, you can kind of think like what a bass player might play in the situation that we're working in. So maybe it's a box shuffle, and we're playing one of those box patterns that we covered in several videos back now, but it'd be good to go back and review that if you're not familiar with it. But say the bass player is playing something like this. So you can kind of go in and out, adding those bass notes, sort of implying the chord changes. So implying chord changes, walking up to the next chord, back down to the chord you were just on, all while throwing in those rhythm stabs with your full chords or partial chords. So the box pattern is one sort of approach to take. Maybe they're playing, maybe the bass player or the song calls for more of a walking bass line, like a. So same principle applies, but it's important, and I found it useful in my career to go back and listen to all the recordings that I learned to play guitar from and learned all the guitar parts. Go back and listen to the bass player and learn all the bass parts on guitar, and that'll serve you well in coming up with these more interesting rhythm approaches to take other than just straight comping. Okay, so there's a million different bass ideas to apply, so mess around with that. Have a metronome on when you're doing it, or a backing track, so that you know that you're coming in at the right time and you're moving from the bass part to the chordal part on time. That's critical. Obviously the groove is always the most important thing, if you ask me. Okay, so that covers some bass ideas. So in terms of other chord voicings that we might use, I found it useful, and I like to keep things really simple conceptually, but I found it useful to just play chords that I already know and just move them around wherever I need them. So, for example, you can, like I said, you can, in a blues, you can play a 6th chord, you can play a dominant 7th chord, you can play a 9th chord. So why not try to see, depending on the situation, you might be able to use all of those simultaneously and moving between different voices of them to make it sound like you're doing more than you really are, which is just playing, you know, just playing the one chord. But if I can do this. See, I was just playing 1-4-5, and I just used a couple different voicings of a 7th chord, you know, over the 1, this one, kind of the Freddie King chord from Hideaway, you know. Anyway, the key of E. So that's back in the key of A, or you can use that, you know, that 7th chord. You can also play your, I was playing an A9th up here. So you can do like a... So over the 4 chord, I was going back and forth between this D9, this D9, maybe this D7. Can also use D6 here, which is the same as the A6. Just take your middle finger off. And the 4 chord is interesting because you can also use diminished patterns, right? So I use that one a lot. It's almost like you're making a A9th chord, but just down a chorus of strings. And with the diminished chord, you can move that in 3. You don't have to change the shape of it. You can move it 3 frets in either direction, and it repeats itself. Or you can make the diminished chord here. Ah, sorry, I don't use that one. And that repeats in 3 frets either direction too, so you can get a lot of mileage out of that. It can sound like there's a lot going on. So let's go from the 1 to the 4 again. it's all over the 4 chord, just different voicings of the same, you know, type of chord. Okay, so then the same thing you can do over the 5 chord. You can do 9th chord. You can play the E7th here, E9th here. So find those different voicings on the neck and apply them to sort of create that momentum. The other thing you can use is inversions, which I there's a couple that I kind of wear out, probably use too much, but you can play. So I'm not going to go into the whole thing of, you know, how to figure out where the inversions are. You're going to have to go back and sort of learn that on your own. But or I could do a whole separate, you know, video series of it. Something I'm still learning about quite a bit about. But over the 5 chord. So what I like to do is throw in that walk up to the inversion, be over the 4 chord here, and then back to that 9th chord. So from the 5. So just a couple ideas, inversion related there. If you notice on that last time, I kind of walked from the 5, actually the 1 going into the 5. So if you look closely, that's an E chord right there. So when you walk down, you walk down to your 5 that way. So that's kind of another interesting way to do it. It works well in a swing style groove. So combining those two ideas. There's a diminished over the 4, right? So I feel like a lot of times I hear people play that I know they know those chords, but it's just applying it in that way that can really make a big difference in the feel of the song. Like I said, it's not always appropriate to use to move those chords around that way. Speaking of which, you can also do this. I forgot to mention this earlier, but you can do the T-bone walker thing. It works really great, where you just take this 9th chord, and you can just move it. Move it around. One fret to either direction. Kind of chromatically. And that works great on a slow blues or something like that. You can really create some momentum that way. So anyway, that's quite a few concepts to think about, or a few ideas to think about, but just break it down, take each one by one, come up with your own ideas, combine the moving bass line with the moving chord shapes, and like I said, it can be really useful in some contexts. Some contexts it's not always appropriate to do that, so it's important to listen to what else is going on around you, what other musicians are playing, and you know, have the good sense and the good taste to apply what's appropriate in that situation. So I hope that gives you some ideas of something to think about, come up with your own stuff, and there'll be plenty more to do on this subject down the road. So, all right, thank you again for watching.